Most people are working longer than they want to and may not know why it's happening. The idea of retiring at 62 or 65 sounds great in theory, but the data tells a different story. And according to the Center for Retirement Research, the average retirement age is now 3 years later than it was in the 1990s. And yet 59% of Americans still say they want to retire before 65. So what's going on? Well, it's complicated. Social Security has shifted, pensions are mostly gone, and health insurance is a powerful tether, especially for those not yet eligible for Medicare. Add to that a longer life expectancy, things like market volatility, and the rise of knowledge work that feels more sustainable well into the 60s, and suddenly staying becomes easier than going. But here's the real danger. If you don't intentionally plan your retirement, you can drift past your ideal exit without ever deciding to stay. I had a client, Mark, who stayed in his job until 69, not because he had to, but because he wasn't sure what came next. His identity, his purpose, his friendships, all tied to work. And maybe you're thinking, that won't happen to me. I'll know when the time is right. I'll just know it. Maybe so, but if you don't have a plan, the system will quietly make one for you. So in this video, we're gonna unpack why people are retiring later and how to make sure you're not one of them by accident. Let's get started. Welcome to the Retirement Guide channel. I'm Daryl Rosen. My firm, SECURiMENT Wealth, helps people just like you plan for and hopefully enjoy retirement. Hopefully. If you've had the misfortune of watching any of my videos, you know I believe people should retire as early as they're financially and emotionally ready. Why? Because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And after years of working with clients and my own life, I've seen that the best living usually happens when you're younger and healthier and truly able to enjoy it. One of the biggest reasons people keep working is to increase the amount of that Social Security benefit. In fact, the complexity of the Social Security claiming decision causes people to work longer. Gradual increase in Social Security's full retirement age has resulted in financial incentives for older workers to delay retirement to avoid reduced benefits. The Social Security full retirement age, as you know, used to be 65, but for anyone born after 1954, that number has been creeping up, 66, 66 and a half, all the way to 67 if you were born after 1960. The reason why this matters is because the longer you wait to claim Social Security up to that full retirement age, the more you receive each month, which is a good thing. Retire early and your benefits can be reduced by as much as 25 to 30%, and that's not a small number, especially when you're planning for income that might have to last for 30 years or more. This creates a strong financial incentive to delay retirement, even if you're emotionally or physically ready to stop working. I find that people hang on longer, not because they want to, but because they don't want to lock in a permanently lower income number. It's like the government is saying, if you can afford to wait, we'll pay you more. And for a lot of people, that's enough to stay in the workforce longer than they had planned. It's also kind of confusing. I've met a lot of people who think they have to work until their full retirement age. It's like this magical age is actually when you're supposed to retire. Here's a SECURiMENT tip for you. The Social Security claiming decision is a bit overblown in my view. You don't know how long you're gonna live, which makes it darn near impossible to make the 100% most optimal decision. Another variable that has caused people to work longer is the decades-long transition from guaranteed pensions to retirement savings plans like the 401k, which has put the onus of financial security on workers themselves and incentivized them to remain employed longer. This move from pensions to 401ks has changed retirement forever. There was a time not too long ago when retirement came with a promise. If you worked 30, maybe even 40 years, and then you got a pension, a guaranteed monthly check for life. And that security let people retire with confidence, knowing they'd have that guaranteed income no matter how long they lived. But over the last several decades, that model quietly disappeared. Starting in the 1980s, employers began phasing out defined benefit pensions and replacing them with what we call defined contribution plans like the 401k. The shift was framed as empowering. You get to control your own retirement savings, but the reality, the risk got transferred from the company to the employee, and the employees weren't always prepared to accept that responsibility. Now, instead of a guaranteed check, you've got a fluctuating account balance, and whether that balance will last 20 or 30 years depends on market performance, your contribution discipline, and a whole lot of planning. This change has fundamentally reshaped retirement. Without a safety net, many workers feel like they just can't afford to stop. They stay employed longer, adding to their savings, reducing the number of years they'll need to draw from it. It's not about fear, it's about uncertainty. Demographic shifts have also played a role. The increase in life expectancy by an average of 3.2 years has made it necessary for many Americans to work longer to fund a longer lifespan, emphasizing the need for better health care and job flexibility. Also, higher education levels correlate with longer working years due to the nature of jobs, in some cases being less physically demanding, leading to an increased willingness to keep working into an older age. Longer life expectancy sounds like a win. In many cases, it is. Thanks to better healthcare, cleaner living, and medical innovation, the average American now lives longer than they did just a generation ago. Here's the catch. Those extra years aren't free. They come with more years of expenses to cover, more years of potential health care costs, and more pressure to make your retirement savings last. For many people, that math alone is enough to keep them working longer. I had a client, Denise, a 66-year-old marketing executive, sharp, healthy, and still genuinely enjoying her work. She told me, my mom passed at 72, but if I live into my 90s like my aunts, I'm not sure I'm financially ready for that. She doesn't have to work, but the idea of running out of money at 85, no matter how small a chance there actually is of that, keeps her from pulling the plug. There's also that education angle. People with college degrees or advanced training tend to work longer, not just because they live longer, but because their jobs are typically less physically demanding. Take me for an example. I manage money, I implement retirement plans, and I shoot these silly videos, not exactly backbreaking. And when your work doesn't wear down your body, it's easier to keep going. Keep this in mind. Longer life shouldn't mean endless work. The key is knowing when enough is actually enough and how much money with the market's ups and downs is actually enough. Unfortunately, the volatility of the stock market poses a risk for individuals approaching retirement, where poor market conditions may force unanticipated delays in retiring, like what's happening right now in the market. Earlier this month, the announcement of new tariffs rattled the market, something fierce. The S&P 500 took a steep dive, and headlines were filled with words like correction and uncertainty, very scary words. For those nearing retirement, these aren't just buzzwords, they're really gut checks. And many of the pundits and surrogates who supported the tariffs went on TV and said that people shouldn't look at their 401k balances, but that's certainly easier said than done. I have a client, Susan, who's ready to retire at 64. Her financial plan is rock solid. But when the market turned recently, she didn't panic, but she did pause her retirement plan. She said, I know I'm okay long term, but I'd feel better giving this a little more time to settle. She continues to work, and certainly with today's retirement landscape so dependent on personal savings and market performance, timing matters, not just financially, but really emotionally and how comfortable we are. That shift we discussed earlier from pensions to 401ks means the retirees now carry the risk that employers used to shoulder. And in market swings tied to global trade, inflation, and elections, it's no wonder people are cautious. For a lot of people, work is more than just what they do, it's how they understand themselves. After decades in the same role, your title becomes really your identity. Your team becomes your social circle. Even your calendar gives your life rhythm. You're the go-to person, the mentor, the problem solver. And when that goes away, it can feel like you're losing a part of yourself. So all this is borne out by a study I read in the Journal of Aging Studies, which found that retirees who lacked a clear sense of identity and purpose post-career were significantly more likely to report symptoms like depression, regret, and diminished life satisfaction. Researchers described it as falling into a psychological void. And to make matters more complicated, retirement experts, and let's be honest, YouTube personalities, constantly push the idea that you must reinvent yourself in retirement. That if you don't have a passion project, a nonprofit, or a watercolor side hustle lined up, you're somehow not doing it right. That pressure can backfire. I've seen clients stay in their jobs not because they need the paycheck, but because they haven't figured out what comes next, and they're afraid to face that uncertainty head on. You've heard that markets hate uncertainty, right? Well, so do people. So working becomes the path of least resistance, the safer bet. Speaking about safety, access to employer-sponsored health insurance helps people feel safe. For many Americans, especially those not yet eligible for Medicare, continuing to work means keeping access to affordable, comprehensive health insurance. The cost of private insurance, particularly for those with pre-existing conditions, you know this, can be a major barrier to retiring before age 65. Even for those who could afford to retire early, the uncertainty of the healthcare landscape, it makes staying on an employer-sponsored plan feel like a safer, less risky option. Take my client Mark, a 62-year-old project manager. Financially, he's ready to retire, but his wife Lisa has a chronic health condition and their employer health plan gives them excellent coverage. The idea of navigating the ACA marketplace with its shifting premiums and quite confusing choices, it felt overwhelming. So Mark kept working simply to ensure uninterrupted affordable care until both he and Lisa qualified for Medicare. Here's my take on the subject. If you've had Cadillac health insurance at a low cost your whole career, losing it can feel really scary. But I think self-employed people may have a clearer perspective. I've been buying my own health insurance since 2007. It goes up every year. My deductible is brutal, and I basically consider it catastrophic coverage at this point in my life. My knee replacement 6 weeks ago is the perfect example of getting the bang for my buck. But here's the thing, healthcare is just a math equation. I pay about $1,000 a month. Either you can afford it or you can't. I think if more people saw it that way, just on the budget line item, they might feel more free to walk away from work when they're ready. If you like this video, you might like this one and this one. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.